There you are. We've just finished up the displacement FX and the cracks, and to get on with the bump effects, which is the next node, we should just turn off the displacement FX. We don't want anything getting in the way of the bump. Alright, it's going to take a little bit of explaining, so I'll get it out of the way first. We've got at the top here object position mapping, and it's the same over here, object position mapping. And I'll show you the reason why I came up with that idea and why it was necessary for me to add it. So I'll show you viewport shading, Shift A, mesh plane RX90. I'm going to scale it on the X, SX, because I want to make a wooden plank shape. And then I've got to Q, that's my Q, my quick menu, all transforms. You do Control A, all transforms, and the obligatory tab U, cube projection. And I must put the material on. Alright, so now we're going to have a little brick wall. So a little tip for when you're making other materials is what I would normally do, you know, if I was making an ice or a road or a path or just ground, general terrain, I would just take the scale of the bricks down to 0.01, and this effectively becomes one brick. So I want this color. You can click and drag to replace colors, because this is effectively one brick now, and it will take bits of these three colors. So as long as they're all the same, excuse me, then we're all good. It's a bit bright, but in fact, let me just take that darker. That's too bright. Click, drag, click, drag. Alright, okay, so that's the start of the plank. Now, if we'll start with bump effects 2, because this is very much intrinsically related to this. So let's just put bump effects 2 in, which is this gravelly, gritty effect. The scale is massive, so I'm going to bring it down to 0.2, and I want that much. No, 0.5. 0.8. That'll do. So if I was making, because this is the exact reason I made it, when I was making a wooden plank, this needed to be stretched. So now you have an overall and vertical and horizontal scale. So if I put that down to 0.1, it will stretch it, and then we just need to make the scale bigger, 5. There you go. So let's stretch that, and then now we just need this color filter to match, and this is why color filter 1 has a horizontal and vertical scale. So if you put that to 0.12, no, just to 0.1, there's no 2. And let's just change the color of this filter to, we're going to get into the filters, do not fret. It's screen, so it needs to be lighter, a bit orangey, a bit there. Oh, yeah, no, that's awful. Just don't waste time, Nick. That'll do. So now it looks like a wooden plank. You can add more bump if you want. And just to make it look more like a wooden plank, let's just put a solidify on there. And then if I shift and left click and drag to the right, I'll get a bit of thickness to it. That's what I want. Now, this is where we get to object position mapping. So if there's two ways of doing this. I'll show you this way, because this is when I realised I needed this. So if I shift D, Z, as if I was making a wooden fence that's sitting on its side, just, you know, any object that requires lots of wooden planks. As you can see, if I duplicate it, Shift D or even Alt D, it's all looking the same. Both the filter, the color filter, and the bump, it's the same on every plank. If you switch both of them over to position mapping, hang on, what have I just changed? Color effects. Alright, so now bump effects to position. Now, they're all different. And it doesn't matter where you duplicate, Alt D, X, anywhere in the scene, it's going to look different, because it's based on the position. And I put a random effector in there, so it doesn't, there's a random number between. So if this was a whole image, and that was what the filter was doing, you would see areas that kind of link up because it's still using one image. It's just where the geometry is displays that part of this huge image. But there's a bit of a randomness to it, so this one may actually, as part of this image, would be up here somewhere, so that they don't, you know, exactly match. They just look very different. So that's what that's for. The other way of doing something like that, which has a little less control unless you make them their own objects, is to add an array modifier. And the bonus about adding adding an array modifier is that it does that job for you. So if I don't want to move it on the X, I want to go on the Z, 1.1 up, and with an array modifier, and I don't know why it does this, it just does. They're all different anyway. But it looks to me like the filter, what I said about that image being one image and then the geometry there is just makes it that part of the image visible, it kind of looks to me like it is still one. You can see that it is just one image, whereas with that version, object position mapping, because I've added that randomness, this image, for instance, it might be displaying a chunk up here or a chunk over there, rather than the chunk directly above this, if that makes any sense. I hope that does. So that's object position mapping in a nutshell. So we'll delete them, and then we'll bring our plane back, and let me just check I have that. Yep, okay. So we want to, for the other bits and bobs, I just need to bring some bricks back. So scale, I think it was 5 around there. I forgot I had tea, sorry, bear with me. Oh, Englishman's got to have his cup of tea. Jabbly. Yeah, so if we put the bump effects and the color effects back their scales, because I've stretched them, so vertical back to 1, and same on the color filter, vertical 1, and let's just lower the scale of bump effects 2 so that we can it doesn't look so crazy. I need to get a bit closer. Okay, so here we can see bump effects 2 and this color effects 1 filter. Now, if, like in the setting up video where I had to put that message saying there was an issue with the stretching, this has been resolved, well, this is the resolution. So I'm just extruding on the Y, EY, and then Control R, move my mouse wheel, get roughly the same subdivisions, and then Q for me, all transforms, and then U, Q projection. This will look like it did earlier with stretched bands. My tea's going cold, I've got to get it in quick. Oh, Cat Rosie. So here it's stretched, and it wasn't easy to get this position mapping selection control going. So this is the quickest and easiest I could make it, by giving you options of where the mapping is or where the mappings come from. So when it does this here, bump FX2, it will be easy to see if I go over to color FX1. It's the same. Object generated mapping. When I slide this, it goes back to normal. The bump, as you can see, is still stretched. So we need to do the same for bump FX2. Object generated. And it's difficult to see over here because of the sun, but I can assure you the bump is here somewhere. It's I think it's the sunshine. Overall scale 10. There we go. So it's just a bit more difficult to see around this side, but yeah, so that's what those two sliders are for, objects generated. So if you're duplicating an object around the scene, you want it to look different, use position mapping on both. Just match them. Whatever you do on this one, do on that one, pretty much. And if you're making 3D shapes, walls like this, you're going to want generating. But that only seems to affect bump effects 2 and color effects 1, where that's necessary. It didn't seem to be necessary for any others, but it's there to stop that stretching problem happening. Okay. Right, bump effects 2, let's just turn that off, and I'll put that off. And let's talk about this, incorporate more height, because that I think is probably confusing people, and I'm not sure if I've explained it well enough in the manual. It's easier to see it. So first off, we need some displacement, because this is, as it says on the thing, dependent on the displacement, how much the bricks are displacing from the wall, and in this case quite a bit, but I need more gaps, so I'm just gonna do our multiple color filter mortar jobby and put our bias down 0 so that we can see some gaps in the wall. Okay, so over to bump effects here, this incorporate more height, as it says there, set scale to 0 for it to remove it. And the reason we're not seeing the bump at the moment is because of this brick shape bump FX mix. Just whack that up. When you're using bricks, you're going to want that up. So here you can see there is this erratic 100 scale bump here, but not here, not here, not here, here or here. These are all just completely clean. But I made this do it this way because I just wanted this bump to be different to whatever bumps are on the bricks. And in this instance, these are still bricks, really. They're very close to the wall, but they're still bricks, and they shouldn't have the same bump as that. They can if they want, it's up to you. But I just mean for my preferences, I thought, nah, bruv, man needs to get some, man's got to do something about that. So what I did is I added this, incorporate more height. If I put in 1, I am saying 1 is, let's say 1 is the furthest from the wall the displacement will allow a brick to come. So something like this one is probably as far from the wall as it's allowed to be given the amount of displacement we've told it to use. So I need to get back to that point because that was good, it was showing me. Yeah, so because it's on 1, I'm saying the bricks that are as far from the wall as possible can still have this bump. If I put it to 0.1, so I'm telling it 0.1 being real close to the wall, as you can see, the bump is now only appearing on the gaps. This one here looks, it's coloured like the mortar, so it should have the bump as well. So in order to get the bump on that, I've got to increase this number to say you can go 0.2 from the wall and give it bump. And now that's got the bump too. So from far away, it looks the same, you know, and it's not bringing in any of the other bricks. So if we go a little bit further at 0.4, so these bricks are now included, but these still aren't. They're still very clean. And then just for laugh, 0.6, and you know, you get it. The more number you give it, that this brick is like 0.6 from the wall, so it's going to get the bump. This brick is clearly 1 from the wall, so it's not going to get the bump. So that's what that is specifically for. But I'm going to have it at 0.1 because I only want it on the gaps. So we've done brick shape bump effects. 1 is just pretty much this. It's another version of that. So if we mix that in, and this will now cover all of the bricks rather than just this. So it's effectively the same thing, but you've still got loads of control as you would. It's a noise filter. Yeah, so, and you know, if you took it down to, what, I don't know, 5, what's that look like? Yeah, so it gives it a bit of a, you know, bit of roughness, because the bricks aren't going to be completely clean. Just because you've got the roughness and the bump down here, we need it here too. So that's bump effects 1. Bump effects 2, we have covered. Bump effects. Bump effects 3 is this, cracks and whatnots. And this has distorted edges, as you can see. If the distorted edges was off, it would just look like Voronoi. You know, we all know what that looks like. So we distort the edges somewhat, and does that. And you can have less of it. 0.1 mix. What's that do? No, done the wrong thing. 0.1. Why won't you? Oh, because it's on 0.1. 0.01. Yeah, with bumps sometimes it's either on or off. I don't know why that is. Hang on, you're not even letting me. Yeah. All right. 0.001. It's going to say 0. Oh no, there we go. So it's just tiny numbers. You can barely see it. It's just tiny numbers will do it. Look like 0.00, 0.004. Yeah, now it's starting to appear much more. So that's Bump Effects 3 with its distorted edges. So let's get rid of that. Cracks bump. Here's more cracks, and I think it's tiny, isn't it? What scale? Yeah, let's put scale 2. Okay, so these are just, you know, more cracks, just a bit more control. It's already fluffed up for you. Bit of scale, bit of randomness, you know. That's another one, and as you can see, it doesn't appear here so much as here. That's still the other bump, so you've got two separate bumps there. And finally, random holes. Let's put some random holes in these bricks. Scale 2. Here they are. So you get these little chunky holes, you know, in brick walls. There they are. And you know, I wouldn't have perfectly clean bricks all the time, so I would have some other bump. So bump effects 2. Let's see what happens if I put 0.2 in there. I mean, you've still got, it's mixing. We've still got the random holes here. 0.02. Yeah. Got your random holes, you got your scragginess, and you got your mortar bump. So you got 3 different bumps displayed at the same time there. And the random holes just has a scale. This is the same old noise. Scale, detail, roughness, distortion. Bosh, we're done. That's it. Bump effects 2 in the bag. Next, we're going to go back. We're going to go over to color effects. We've already talked about one, but I'll just give it a bit more, go over it a bit more. And the others, and then what these do. And yeah. So that's the next one. Until then, fare thee well.